Okay, it's 1 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Sarah Snuggs, and we are going to be going through some technology readiness updates and reminders. This training is intended for folks who've gone through computer-based testing before and are just looking for, again, those updates, refreshers from last year as we get prepared for the upcoming assessments. One thing before we get started, I do just want to say if your school is interested in participating in the upcoming Tech Roadshow that's coming up in January, please go ahead and email Kenitra Germany by November 10th with your information, and she'll get you added to the list that they're keeping of folks who are interested in the Tech Roadshow. So please email Kenitra by November 10th. Again, my name is Sarah Snuggs, and I will be your trainer today. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to get this information. I know everybody is busy, and we definitely appreciate you coming to our training today. If you have any questions as we go through our training, on your navigation bar, you'll see that Q&A option. Selecting that will open up your question box. Go ahead and type in your question into that field and then select send when you're done. And either I will try to answer the question while we go through our training, or one of our panelists will respond to you as soon as possible. Okay, so here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about some resources, remind you where you can find information for computer-based testing. CBT is computer-based testing. Remind you about where to locate system requirements for the different components of testing. We'll talk about TestNav specifically for Chromebooks and iPads, and go through some reminders about how to put together all of your infrastructure plan and be prepared for the administration. So one of the main resources that you can use for your infrastructure and technology information is the ACT Aspire landing page, and you'll see that there is that Technology Setup tab. Going here, you'll be able to find all of the major technology documents, quick explanations about the different computer-based testing components, links to the different types of installers for both Proctor Caching and TestNav, and pretty much just be a one-stop shop for you to find everything you might need to get you pointed in the right direction. So I'll go ahead and go to the site. It is actaspire.pearson.com. And you will see here, this is the site. You're going to come up here to the technology setup, and up at the top you'll find your technical readiness manual. This is newly updated for the fall, so go ahead and if you have last year's version, you'll want to make sure you get the latest. You can always save that electronically, or you can come visit the site to locate it, or you can always print it out as well. The TestNav system requirements, this is going to open up the TestNav support site, and we're going to talk about this in a little more detail here in just a moment. News and bulletins, so technical bulletins will be posted here, so you can quickly find them. When we send out emails and communications about technology, they will be cross-posted here, so that, again, you don't have to try to find them in your email. We'll have them out here on the website for you. Computer-based testing components, you'll see information about System Check, Proctor Caching, and TestNav 8, a little bit about what they are, and then links to the System Check website, the Proctor Cache installers, and again, the TestNav 8 support site. Installable TestNav, these are our links to our apps, and these are recommended over browser-based testing. We do always recommend using the installable TestNav. We have versions for desktop app, which includes both desktops and laptops, the iPad app, and the Chromebook app. So we support multiple devices, and we do recommend, again, the installable version since it's not dependent on a browser and Java. Down here, we have additional technology resources, and you can expand this. So we have a link to the portal user guide, Proctor Caching, which we'll talk about. There are some steps that you need to take in the portal in order to fully set up your Proctor Caching default settings. Again, the technical readiness manual. the Technology Coordinator Checklist. This is a list of activities that technology coordinators can perform to go through and prepare for the assessments. And the checklist is broken out as well by a time frame, so kind of 2 months before, 1 month before, etc. And then a sample contingency plan. So contingency plan, we have a sample out here, and you can take this and modify it as needed. But these are things you want to think about that may occur during testing, things like inclement weather, the power going out, an internet connection failing during online testing. And so we have some recommended actions, but each school and or district may have additional steps or want to modify these steps. So this is kind of your starting point, but we definitely encourage you to make it your own and come up with your own local contingency plan for some of the actions that may occur, just that you're having a prepared approach and are not surprised if something may happen. So those are the technology resources here on the Technology Setup tab. We're going to talk about the TestNav 8 support site. So this is also on that technology setup, and that was that TestNav system requirements up at the top. We'll go look at the site here in just a moment. But this is another online resource. It's going to have information that prepares you for setting up and supporting both TestNav and ProctorCache. So you'll see TestNav and ProctorCache are on here. The site is updated regularly, and it's only going to contain the most current information. You'll see at the bottom we have a recently updated section, and if you click on that, it'll detail anything that has been recently changed or updated here on the support site. There is no login required. It is mobile ready, so you can access this as well from your mobile devices. So we'll come back over. I'm going to scroll back up here to TestNav system requirements, show you where you can get to it from the landing page. So then it'll open up, take you here to this TestNav 8 support site. Here on the system requirements, I want to point out we do still support Windows, OS 10, Linux, iOS, and Chrome OS. ACT Aspire does not support Android devices at this time, though, so you will just want to disregard this column, but all of the other information is applicable to ACT Aspire. As you scroll down, you'll see that there are ports that you want to make sure, URLs and ports you want to make sure that you are whitelisting so that your content filters, your firewalls, that the information for TestNav is able to get through your local network. Installable TestNav, again, this is our recommended apps. You'll, again, disregard Androids, but you'll find the operating systems we support for each of the individual different operating systems, so Chrome OS 50 through 53, iOS 9.3.2 through 9.3.5, Linux on Fedora 24 and Ubuntu 16.04, both are 64-bit versions, OS 10.9 through 10.11, and Windows 7, 8.1, and 10. And you'll see that we have links directly to the apps that you can quickly go find that and download it as needed. And then we have setup instructions that will help walk you through the installation for each of the different devices as well. As a backup, we do have browser-based TestNav. Again, you want to use the installable, but if you do need to use a browser-based version, we do still have browser-based TestNav. However, it is now only available on Firefox ESR 45, and it is the 32-bit version. So you want to make sure that you're downloading the correct version, and that's why we have links here directly to the browser for both OS 10 and OS 10 Sierra and Windows 7, 8.1, and 10. So you want to make sure you're getting the right version. This isn't the same standard Firefox that you download. It is an extended support release version. So you want to make sure you get that correct one. And then if you do download it, then we also have set up TestNav instructions for Firefox as well. And you'll see, ProctorCache system requirements, how to set up and use ProctorCache, lots of information under troubleshooting. Again, another location where you can find technical bulletins, features and demos, and then, like I said, recently updated. As we go through and make updates to the site, you'll see that that is always noted here so that you know what has changed and can make accommodations or updates as needed as you see new information is coming out. So you can see it's pretty regular that we're making updates here on this site. I do see a question coming in about when TestNav for iPad will be able to work with OS 10, and if we know a timeline for that. Unfortunately, at this point, I don't have an ETA. I do know that our technology engineers are working directly with Apple, trying to get this resolved, because we know that folks do want to make that update to iOS 10. But unfortunately, at this point, it is still not supported. And definitely, as we get more information, we will certainly communicate that out to folks. But for now, go ahead and stay with 9.3.2 through 9.3.5 if you are going to be using your iPads for assessment purposes. Okay, so as you click on any of those installer links, it is going to take you here to this installable TestNav page. It's download.testnav.com. And so again, just you'll see that we have links for the desktop app for OS 10, 2 different versions for Windows, your standard EXE installer for individual installation, and a .msi installer for global installation, both Linux, Fedora, and Ubuntu. The iPad, remember, we do not support Android devices, Chromebooks, again, the browser-based TestNav, and also even the Proctor Cache installer. So everything is located here on this one page where you can get all of the different apps that you may need. You know, a lot of our districts are supporting multiple types of devices, so you can locate them all here on one page. And all of these installations, they are, small footprint installations. They are intended to be a quick installation for you. So on an individual computer, they generally only take a few minutes. However, network installations can vary depending on your environment. But again, they are intended to be a small footprint and be relatively quick for you to install. Some handy resources. So again, keep that technical readiness manual close to you. It's going to have information about your computer-based testing requirements, goes through setup steps and information. So it's a very handy manual. That's why we recommend, again, either bookmarking it or having it readily available for you. The TestNav 8 error codes. So I showed you those were under the troubleshooting section on the TestNav 8 support site. We have a list of all the TestNav 8 error codes out there, and they also have troubleshooting and resolution steps. So another one that you would probably want to bookmark. They are available online, and as you saw, since they are being updated on a regular basis, that makes sure you're getting the latest information for your error codes. So over here under troubleshooting, error codes, you'll see all of the different error messages that may occur. You'll see the error number, the error message that's going to be shown on TestNav, and then additional information and resolution steps. So we're going to try to help you get through this and make sure that you can get all the information here as needed. And then, of course, if you still need additional support, you're always welcome to contact our customer support for assistance. The error codes are also on your Alabama Avocet site. So from the landing page, if you go to Training and Manuals, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and here is Avocet. Avocet is our online resource for all of our documents, users guides, all of our kind of printed materials. And you'll see that there is a link directly to our Alabama state-specific Avocet site. You want to use that. If you do go here to this first link, our general link, you'll see it just says ACT Aspire at the top, but we have a link directly to Alabama as well. So you always want to make sure that when you're going to Avocet, it says ACT Aspire Alabama up at the top. So under T for TestNav, you'll see the error code descriptions. And so clicking on that again is going to take you directly to our support site to those error codes. So again, you can find it off of the support site if you go there directly, or if you're using Avocet, it's under T for TestNav, and then the error codes are linked there as well. Okay, so we talked about some resources. Now we're going to dive into Proctor caching. So Proctor caching is Pearson and ACT Aspire supplied software, and is going to be used in conjunction with TestNav to reduce bandwidth requirements and accelerate the delivery of test content. Some of you may have used this last year. It's highly recommended previously to use Proctor caching due to the many benefits it has. This year, it is going to be required. So again, lots of benefits, and so we are making it a required installation this year. Basically, Proctor caching is going to allow you to pre-cache the test content, so all the forms that the students are going to be taking when they log into TestNav. It's going to allow you to pre-cache that content before the test. We recommend about a week before, so that you can go ahead and start pre-caching content. You're going to be able to save it then to your local network on a computer or computers that you identify. It helps you reduce or eliminate redundant downloads of test content. So previously, where students were all having to access the content through your internet, it's now going to be there locally. So it's going to reduce that burden on your internet service provider, your ISP, because you're not having to pull down redundant content multiple times for each of your students. And it will be stored in an encrypted local copy there on your Proctor caching computers. Then you'll be able to serve them at local area network speeds to your students. So again, remember, it is required this year for all 2016-2017 computer-based assessments. Okay, so let's go through kind of a high-level overflow of Proctor caching. So current users will be or have been rolled over in the portal, but if necessary, of course, test administrators and, test coordinators and administrators can always invite new technology coordinators into the site if needed. So if you are a technology coordinator and you have not received an invitation into the portal, you'll need to make sure you contact your test coordinator to request an account. Once you have an account and are able to log in, that's when you'll be able to create default Proctor cache settings there in the portal. And those Proctor cache settings will then be used by the test sessions that test coordinators create. When they set up their test sessions, those default Proctor cache settings will be imported into them. And that's what's going to link your Proctor caching machine and your TestNav. When the students start to log in, it's going to link those together so that the test sessions know where to go and gather the content from the Proctor caching machines. As your testing coordinators start to set up test sessions, after that, technology coordinators will then be able to, through the portal, be able to verify that the test sessions are being directed to the Proctor cache machines, and also be able to, again, pre-cache the test content about a week before the administration. We do recommend that Proctor cache settings be entered in the portal before test sessions are created. Again, that allows the test sessions to have that information pulled in as they're being created. You don't have to go back and link them up separately. We're going to go through the steps because sometimes we know test sessions are going to get created before your Proctor cache settings are in there. We're going to show you how you can still get them linked up. But ideally, the settings would be entered first, and then testing coordinators would start to create their test sessions. So here's a diagram that kind of goes through why we require Proctor caching this year. So it is required. And so here on this side on the left, we have a network that is not using Proctor caching. So we have each of our student computers here at the bottom, and they're pulling down their test content. And all of that's coming down through the internet. Many of these forms, of course, are going to be the same. Students are taking the same test with the same form. And so you're pulling down essentially redundant content. And of course, at the same time, you have all of your normal internet-related activities going on. You have teachers who are showing YouTube videos for class. You have computer labs. You have attendance reporting that may be running. all of those are also going on at the same time. And so that really starts to put a burden on your ISP. Here on the right, we have proctor caching. We see that, again, about a week before testing, you're going to pull down those forms, that individual form once, going to pull it down to your local proctor caching computer or computers. And then that proctor caching computer is going to be what serves the test content to each of the individual student computers. So you don't have all of that traffic going through your ISP. You're able to pull it down in advance, and it really is going to help you test more students at the same time and in a more stable way. So you don't have, all that traffic through your internet service provider. And so that's why we are saying that proctor caching is required this year. Okay, so setup, again, it is required. If you previously did proctor caching, since it was recommended and you have used it in the past, you'll want to go ahead and uninstall that previous version from your computers, and then go ahead and download the installer. And if you're a new person or a district that's newly using proctor cache this year, then you'll just, of course, start here at downloading the installer. So do you want to note, for those of you who previously done proctor caching, these are new installers since last spring. So that's why you do need to uninstall the previous one and download the newest. Again, that direct link is download.testnav.com, but you can also, as we saw, you can get it off of the landing page, or you can get it off of the TestNav 8 support sites. Lots of places, depending on the resource you prefer, where you can find the installers that you need. Once you download it, then you can run it. There's an Install Anywhere wizard that's going to prompt you through the very quick installation process. Once that installation is complete, you will be able to start the service, and it is normally started by default, but there are shortcuts available to start or stop the service if needed as well. And then you will need to verify that the service is running, and you'll do this by visiting the proctor cache diagnostics page. We'll talk about the diagnostics page in more detail shortly. If you have previously used proctor caching, you can purge your previously cached content at this point. There are instructions for purging your content in the technical readiness manual. And we'll go ahead. I'm going to just show here all programs. I do have proctor cache installed on my computer. So this is where I said that you can start and stop the service if needed. And then this monitor proctor caching, this is what we're going to talk about here in just a moment. This is the proctor cache diagnostics page. So that's how you're going to be able to launch that screen. So once you get to that diagnostics page, there are 3 tabs. You'll see the test tab, the clients tab, and the settings tab. So the test tab, this is where you can see information about the test content. These are the actual forms and items that are being downloaded. You can see their caching status, and you're even able to drill down all the way to the individual test item level if you need to. Clients is where, as students start to log into TestNav, you will be able to see the IP addresses for those computers that they're using and see that they are connecting to TestNav. And you can even drill down as well all the way to an individual computer. And then settings, this is where you're able to set a custom password to refresh, reload, or purge cached content. So let's go take a look at the diagnostics page. So here I am on my diagnostics page. So I'm on the test tab. Again, I got here from that all programs from my proctor cache, monitor proctor caching. And so you'll be able to see which test content, grade 3 English, interim 2 in this case, interim 1. You'll be able to see what test content you have downloaded. Again, you can drill down and see all the way to the individual item level. The status of your downloads. Green, okay. Yellow generally means that it's still being downloaded. And then if you ever see a red status, then we would recommend going ahead and reloading your test content. clients. I'm not actually, supporting any students. I don't have any clients that are connecting to my Proctor caching computer. But if there were, this is where you'd be able to see those computer information all the way down to their IP address and see more information. And then settings, this is where you can, again, reset your password if needed. I see a question about installing the Proctor cache and installing the new Proctor cache, if that will affect interim testing. If you have not previously, if you have not already uninstalled the Proctor caching and installed the latest version, I'm not sure what your interim window is. We would always recommend using the latest version, making sure that you have that installed. I wouldn't do it, when you have students actively testing, make sure that you're allowing the Proctor caching to support the students that are actively testing. Do it at a time when they are not testing, making sure that you still have that IP address information. As long as that IP address isn't changing, you don't have to update anything in the portal. You just have to get that latest version of the Proctor cache installed on the computer. And then I see a question as well about the default password. So the default password, I don't know if it will show. No. It is T as in Tom 35 T 1N6. So it's kind of the elite speak. Spells out testing, if that makes it easier. T35 T 1N6 is the initial default password for Proctor caching, and then you can change it again to one of your choosing. And there are instructions in the technical readiness manual about how to reset that or even change it back to the default if needed. Okay, so one other thing before we move on to setting up your default settings, I do want to note with Proctor caching. Proctor caching is meant to be flexible. We're going to talk about this here in a moment. So you can install Proctor caching at the organization level. So you can do it either at the district level or even all the way to a school level. And you can do both. So you could even have a Proctor cache computer at the district level and at the school level. And so it's going to go in a hierarchy and see if it can get the Proctor cache settings and then move up. If there's nothing at the school level, it'll see that there's one at the district level kind of as a fail-safe. So very flexible. Do it at either your district or school level as needed, and can do multiple as well. So once you've installed Proctor caching, you're going to need to note your IP address. You're going to come into the portal. You're going to choose the organization where you want to set up that Proctor caching computer, whether it's the district or the school. And then you'll go to Organizations and Proctor cache Settings. And that'll take you here to this Manage Proctor cache screen. You'll input that IP address for the Proctor caching computer, and then port 4480 for the Proctor cache machine as well. This IP address, I want to note, it does need to be a fixed internal IP address. So you don't want to use a dynamic IP address, because with the dynamic IP address, those are changing, could be daily, weekly, whatever the case might be, however you have your dynamic IP addresses set up. You don't want to have that IP address that change while students are testing though, because you're going to break that link between the test sessions and the Proctor caching machine. So it does need to be a fixed internal IP address. Do not use dynamic IP addresses for your Proctor caching machine. Once you put in the IP address and port 4480, then you'll be able to check status, and that's going to take you to that Proctor cache diagnostics page that we were looking at. That lets you make sure you put in the correct information, you were able to locate and pull up the diagnostic screen, and then you can save your settings to make them active. So now that you have your Proctor cache settings entered, you can, if necessary, apply those Proctor cache settings to test sessions that were previously created. Like I said, ideally, you're going to get your Proctor cache settings entered before test sessions are being created, but we know that's not always going to be the case. So if once you get your Proctor cache settings entered, we'd recommend you go out and make sure that there haven't already been some test sessions that need those settings applied to them. So same thing, you are going to go to Organizations, and then this time you're going to choose Manage Test Sessions from the options. And so then you'll get here to this screen. You'll see your Proctor cache. This test session does not have any Proctor cache settings applied to it. So if you click the checkbox in the action, then you'll see that the Proctor cache settings will be immediately linked to and applied to that test session. That once students start to log in, they're pulling from the Proctor cache machine rather than, again, going through the internet and pulling down the content through your internet service provider. I have a question asking me to just repeat that default password. Unfortunately, no, it is not written down. Security reasons, we're not allowed to write it down. So it is just here in the training, or you can always contact customer service. So again, that T35T1N6. So again, kind of spells out testing, T35T1N6. And basically, we just don't want to put it in writing somewhere, have some, student get a hold of that, some clever student, and be able to get onto your Proctor caching computer and download, purge out content. So it is kept very secure, that password. Again, T35T1N6. Okay, so then after you've linked together all your test sessions, you know that anything that was previously created now has a Proctor cache setting applied to it. Then you can start to pre-cache your test content. So remember, this is about a week before the tests. You're going to come in and pre-cache the content. So you're going to go to Organizations, Pre-cache Tests. It's going to pull up a list of available tests for you to pre-cache. You can do up to 10 tests at one time. Check the box next to the test or tests you want to cache, and then click the pre-cache button. So if you are doing periodic testing, you want to come in, pull down your content before the periodic tests, and then remember to come back again in the spring and pull down your summative tests so that that information is available for your summative testers. I'm going to kind of show you these in the portal real quick. Get logged in. So remember, you do need to choose your organization. If it's going to be a district level setting, then you're going to choose your district. Or again, you can go all the way down to the school level if needed. Go to Organizations and Proctor cache settings. This is where you can, let me switch over to a different tenant. And Proctor cache settings. And so this is where the IP address would be entered and your port. So make sure, again, that's a fixed IP address. You'll put in that information in the port. And so it's very simple as far as your Proctor cache settings. You're going to get those entered into the portal. And then when folks start to go to any of these test options, whether you're doing summative or periodic testing at the time, when they go to create a test session, those Proctor cache settings will be pulled in for them into that test session. Then you can go to Organizations and Manage Test Sessions, and this is where you can check to make sure if you have any test sessions that do not have Proctor cache settings applied to them. So we'll see this one is blank. We don't have any Proctor cache settings. If I just click that action, there it is. It's already been applied, and you are ready to go. This test session now has the Proctor cache settings. Again, that's going to be telling the students as TestNav starts to log in, that's where it will be able to download and access the content from that Proctor cache IP address. I see a question coming in on chat. Can the test coordinator do this, or does the technology coordinator need to be the one to do this? I would need to look at the user guide. Let's go see. I think both the test coordinator can as well. If you look at your user role matrix, you can see which functions they have access to. And I do believe test coordinators have access to this information. Let's see, test sessions. Proctor caching. So for the administrator test coordinator, so the test coordinator role actually cannot. So administrators can do the proctor caching. If you have a test coordinator role, then no, you will not be able to edit the proctor cache setting. So people with the administrator role as well as the tech coordinator role, those would be able to enter and update those proctor cache settings there in the portal. And then pre-caching the tests is under organizations, pre-cache tests. And again, you'll see all of the available tests at this time. Just check the box next to the tests you want to download, and then click pre-cache, and that will start the process and pull down that content onto the proctor caching machine that you've identified there in your proctor cache settings. And so, you know, like I said, if folks set them up before, that's where you're going to go to that manage test sessions, make sure they get linked. If for some reason there are test sessions that have the proctor cache settings, they're there, but you forget to do the pre-cache, then we also have another fail-safe. At that point, then when the first student starts to log in on the day of testing, the test nav is going to look for the test content on the proctor caching computer, see that it's not there, and then it is going to go out, pull down the content, and start to save it then onto the proctor caching machine. And that will show here on your tests as was not preloaded. So I'm always playing around in here. I have a lot of stuff that was not preloaded. It'll show in here rather than by the test level. So it's better to pre-cache it. You can see exactly what you have. But if you forgot to pre-cache, but you still have your proctor caching set up, you have your proctor caching settings in the portal and everything's linked, then the content will start to proctor cache onto the machine for you. It's kind of proctor caching on the fly. It's still not ideal because you do have that content coming through your internet service provider there on the day of testing rather than a week before testing. But it is better than no proctor caching at all. So we kind of build in some fail-safes, try to make sure that we have ways to best support you still, even if some of the steps may have been missed. Okay, so that's proctor caching. At this point, we're going to move on to System Check for TestNav. And System Check is designed for our desktop app and for browser-based testing for our kind of backup option. The System Check was developed to help customers prepare for online testing in two significant areas. It's going to check the system requirements on traditional student workstations, and it also does internet bandwidth checks. So this is going to allow you to make any necessary updates to your traditional testing devices prior to the testing window. So System Check will validate that the testing workstation meets the minimum system requirements to run TestNav 8. If you're doing the desktop app, which is, again, the recommended installable version, it's going to look at the operating system. If as a backup, that computer may be used as browser-based testing, it's also going to make sure that it has the correct browser version and Java version installed on the computer. System Check is not designed for our mobile devices. we'll talk about what's called the app check that you can use in the Chromebook and or iPad TestNav apps. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So system check, again, is only for your traditional desktop and laptop computers. So by using system check, it's going to help you identify, if you have computers that may need some updates in order to be fully ready for computer-based testing. And it does allow you to run bandwidth speed checks. To get the best realistic results for your speed checks, you need to make sure that you're running them from a student workstation on the same day of week and time of day as when you anticipate performing online testing. You don't want to be running this, at the end of the school day when students are starting to leave. You don't want to run this on the weekends. If you're going to be testing between Monday and Friday, between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m., that's the times you want to be running your speed check and making sure that you're getting the most realistic results, that you're aware of. Oh, we have a spike, that occurs on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Oh, I forgot the attendance job kicks in at 11 a.m. on Mondays. And you want to be able to run this during those times of day that you're going to be testing so that you can accommodate for things. If you need to reschedule certain things to later in the day or into another week, maybe for outside of your testing week, you want to be able to be aware of what's going to be occurring, your kind of normal internet activities, so that you can plan for them and, again, make adjustments if needed. And then if you ever have any, troubleshooting issues, then customer service may also ask you to run system check to assist you in your troubleshooting. Okay, so system check, it's completely online. So it's going to be accessed at systemcheck.actaspire.org. You do need to be launching system check from Firefox ESR 45, that 32-bit version, the same one that we use for TestNav. It is browser-based and relies on the Java plugin because it's going to run the test to make sure if you're able to do browser-based testing. So it relies on that Java plugin. So you need to make sure you have the latest version of Java installed when you run system check. And then when you get there, you'll see there's a Java applet that's going to pop up and ask you to accept it. And if you've ever run readiness checks or tools for your other assessments, while that, of course, is very helpful, we would still recommend that you would run system check for ACT Aspire. So again, you're getting the most realistic results for our program during the time that you're going to be testing. So once you get to system check, there's two tabs: check your system and testing capacity. So check your system, it is going to, as it says, check your system to make sure that the browser, Java, and operating system are checked. So you're just going to click Start, and it'll quickly run a check, and then you'll see your results populated. It'll show you what it detected here on your computer. The desktop app is listed first since that's our recommended version, and you'll see for our browser and Java that it's not required, so it didn't check those. And it's simply going to look at the operating system, making sure that it's within our requirements. In case this computer would be used for browser-based testing, though, it is going to check as well. It's going to see Firefox 45. It's going to see the latest Java version and operating system. So it's checking all three of those. If for any reason any of these did not pass, all of mine did, but if it didn't, you would see, instead of a green check mark, you'd see a red X. And so it would tell you what it detected, and then it would tell you what is supported over here beyond the red check. So if there was ever a failure right behind here in this big open field, you would see what we support for that specific component. And then you're always able to print this out. If you click on this print friendly, it will open it up in a PDF, and then that way you can save it electronically or print it out if you need to. We do have folks ask about, what's ideal for running your system check, running these results. Ideally, we would say, whatever laptop or desktop computer you're going to use for testing, ideally, we would recommend you running system check on it to make sure that it meets the requirements. We know that's not always going to be possible, so definitely you want to be checking at least each of your image types, get a representative computer of that, and making sure that each of your images are up to date. You know, you might have Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows or 8.1, Windows 10, you have multiple types, Mac. Make sure that each of your different images meet our system requirements at the very least if you're not able to check most or all of your computers. And then here beneath the checks performed, there is a verification section, and has some brief steps that you can follow. And it's basically going to launch a sample test in TestNav to verify that it will run on the student workstation. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. The second tab is the testing capacity tab. This is where you're going to run your real-time speed checks between that local student workstation and then the Pearson servers. And so, of course, like I said, this is why you want to run it during the actual times that you're going to be testing so that you're getting the most realistic information. So it's going to default, it's always going to have the direct to Pearson no caching option, but you can add your caching computer by clicking on this add caching computer button, and it will ask you to provide a name for that computer, enter the IP address and the port so that it can run the check against that Proctor caching machine. Then you'll click start and it will run a check. And so here, again, we have a test complete, so everything was successful. If it was not, you'd see a red X up here. And here in the test progress, there would be a little information button that you could click to get more information about why the connection failed. Normally, hopefully, you're going to see this complete. You'll be able to see here with directly to Pearson, not using a caching, I would only be able to support about 400 students. But this is why we say Proctor caching is required. You see this Proctor caching machine can support up to 2,150. Obviously, it's going to vary. This is just a sample here at work. Your local environment could be more or less than this, but you want to be putting in your Proctor caching computer so that you have that testing capacity, and you want to be using Proctor caching so that you can test more students. You're less likely to have connectivity issues because that content, again, is going to be there locally rather than coming through the internet. So a lot more students and a lot more stable of a testing environment. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the System Check website. Again, it's systemcheck.actaspire.org. And go ahead and allow my Java plugin to load. So here we are. We have my Java plugins popping up. I'm going to go ahead and say run. And that brings me to the System Check website. I'm going to go ahead and click start. And you'll see this is a very quick check. It's making sure that all of this passes. So ideally, hopefully you can run that on, again, most, if not all of your computers. It is a very quick check. But again, if not, at least representative of each of your images. So I know that I have passed all of the requirements, and minimally, I have the necessary browser, the necessary Java and operating system to support desktop and/or browser-based testing. So down here, this is the verification. So this is going to let me just run a quick sample TestNav test. I'm going to do the browser-based version first, and it's asking me for a username and password. It's just username, password. I'm going to go ahead and type that in. And it is going to then, again, ask me to run the Java applet since I'm on my browser. And it's going to put my browser into full screen mode. And this is what's locking down the test, putting it into this full screen mode so that I cannot access any other apps. And I'm taken directly into TestNav. Click Start Test Now, and congratulations, I have successfully launched TestNav. So that lets me know I not only meet the minimum system requirements, but everything's working properly, and I can actually get to TestNav and get logged in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and log out, and then we'll go through this same check on my desktop app, since that's our recommended. I have my desktop app out here So this is launching the app that I've installed. Same thing, I'm going to use username and password. And it's going to do the same thing. We're going to see it go into that full screen mode. It's locking it down, launching the app, and click Start Test Now. And again, I should get a successful congratulations. So I know I'm good to go on my desktop app as well. And you'll see that it does go a little bit faster on the desktop app. I don't have to run or launch the Java app. So that's another reason to use the desktop app. It's not prone to, an update being run for the browser or Java. Java runs an update every April on their quarterly update, so right during or right before you're testing. So it's not dependent on those. So it's a much simpler installation for you. It does move a little bit faster. You don't have to launch the app. So more stable and a little bit faster for you. Okay, and then the testing capacity. This is where you would be able to add your caching computer. So again, you just put in the display name, the IP address, and the port, and then save it, and it would be added. And then click Start, and that will run the system check. That one is not as fast as the results as the Check Your System. It does take a little while for it to do the full download speed, so not very long, still just a matter of a few minutes, but it's not as instantaneous. So it's going to run that full speed check and then let you know, again, your testing capacity estimate lets you know how many students you would be able to test using your Proctor caching computer. Okay, so now we've gotten through Proctor caching, we've downloaded it, we've installed it, we've put it into our settings, we've run system check. Now we're ready to talk about TestNav 8. So TestNav 8 is the testing platform, so this is where students are going to log in. So there are two setup methods. Again, our recommendation is the installable. And remember, those are for desktop, iPad, and Chromebook, and that we do not support the Android devices. And then if necessary, as a backup, the browser-based testing on, again, only Firefox ESR 45 32-bit. Internet Explorer, Safari, Chrome, any other versions of Firefox, they are not supported and will not launch TestNav. So, but regardless of the test setup method that you're using, whether you're using the installable or the browser-based, no matter what, you need to make sure you configure your network. So firewalls, content filters, spam filters, basically anything that could reroute or block information from being accessed, you want to make sure that you're whitelisting these URLs and ports so that information can get through. So the wildcard, the asterisk, and then .tn.actsaspire.org. TN is for TestNav, and then port 80, and tn.actsaspire.org, port 443. Body.com, PearsonTestContent.com, UserTrust.com, and Commodica.com. Those are all for TestNav, so you want to make sure those are whitelisted. These two are for the ACT Aspire portal. Again, you still want that information to be getting through though, so actaspire.org and highcharts.com. And then optionally, you can do Google Analytics, the google-analytics.com. So that one is an optional one. But these up here, these 8, they are required. You want to make sure, again, those are all whitelisted before testing starts, so that content can make it through your network. So this is the OS 10 information. We kind of touched on this earlier when we had a question. There was a communication sent out on October 6th that discussed our Mac OS 10.12 Sierra and iOS 10 support, and specifically that we are not able to support them. Since then, for OS 10.12 Sierra, we can support testing, but only on that browser-based version. So you need to have that Firefox 45. You cannot use the desktop app for Mac OS 10.12 Sierra. So it's been an update as of late October that came out. But iOS 10 for iPads still is not supported in any capacity. And essentially with these newer operating systems, we found that there was a possible test security issue. And again, we are working closely with Apple to try to get these resolved as quickly as possible, that our districts can continue to use the latest version of the operating system. So at this point for iOS, it's 9.3.2 and then up through 9.3.5. Mac OS 10 is 10.9 through 10.11. And then, like I said, as of late October, 10.12 Sierra is supported, but only as browser-based testing. We would not, recommend taking any upgrades on the workstations or devices that you are going to use for your assessment purposes. In that communication, there is a link to Apple support, though. So if you have upgraded, you can contact them, discuss possible options for downgrading your operating system. And definitely, like I said, as more information becomes available, we will certainly be sending out communications. And this information is also cross-linked on our technical news on the landing page. So this information, if you don't have that email readily available anymore, it is out there on our communication technical bulletins. So once you install your TestNav app, the very first time you launch it, there's going to be a customer selection screen visible. And so it's just going to ask who you're using, and you're going to go ahead and say ACT Aspire. And then each time you log in after that, that selection will be remembered. We do know that some folks are using the TestNav app for multiple test types. So you see like ACTs on here and ACT Aspire. There is a way to go back to the customer selection screen, though, so that you can switch between them as needed. Let me go ahead and show you that here in the desktop app. I'm going to go right here on the user drop-down menu, that choose a different customer. And it will go back out and bring me back to the customer selection screen. So I can say it's ACT Aspire. I know I'm on ACT Aspire because it shows right here on the sign-in screen. So if you do ever need to switch it, it's just that last option under the user drop-down menu, choose a different customer. Okay, so let's talk some more in detail about Chromebooks. So if you are going to be using Chromebooks for testing, you're going to have the Chromebook app, and there are two setup methods. There are managed Chromebooks and unmanaged Chromebooks. Most of our districts and schools will have managed devices. This is where all of the setup steps are being performed through the central administration, and all the Chromebooks in that domain are being configured at once. So when using managed devices, there are essentially two steps that need to be completed. You're going to install that TestNav 8 app on the devices and then set it to run as a kiosk app, and then preserve the local data on the Chromebook. And that's where the saved response file, the SRF, and log files will be preserved on the device. And there are certainly detailed instructions, as we saw on the TestNav 8 support site. They are also cross-referenced on the Alabama Avocet site under C for Chromebooks. Unmanaged Chromebooks, like I said, most of you probably do not have unmanaged Chromebooks. This is where setup steps have to be performed on each device individually. It does require access to the administrator account for that device. If for some reason you don't have access to the administrator account, the Chromebook would need to be backed up to the cloud storage and completely wiped clean before you can continue. And then after testing was complete, you would be able to restore the device from the cloud. Again, also the detailed instructions for unmanaged Chromebooks are under that Chromebooks information on the support site and on the Alabama Avocet site. iPads, a little bit different this year. So previously we had 4 different setup methods that you could choose from: guided access mode, mobile device manager, Apple configurator, etc. With iOS 9.3.2, there is now only one setup method that Apple has, and it's called the Automatic Assessment Configuration, or AAC. And that AAC is going to ensure that the student can't access other apps, pages, or any other features after what's called the single app or kiosk mode is started on the computer. And so those features that are going to be blocked, those are things like autocorrection, definitions, keyboard shortcuts, spell check, those sorts of things. The AAC makes sure that the student cannot access those. There is some information that you can find on the Apple Education website. It's www.apple.com/education/IT. And look for the assessments overview, and there's some more details there if you would like. So first thing you need to do is delete any of those previously established TestNav restrictions you may have used as one of those 4 previous setup methods. And then you're going to download and install the new TestNav for iPads app and install that on the iPads. At that point, it's going to use the automatic assessment configuration. When the TestNav app is initially launched for iPads, it is going to display an enable microphone permission prompt, and you just need to go ahead and click or tap OK to grant permission. This is basically just telling TestNav that if a test is launched on that app and it has audio recorder questions, that TestNav can access the microphone permissions. So just click OK, and that's just going to be a setting that TestNav remembers. If you forget and clicked Do Not Allow, the next time you try to get into the app, it will kind of prompt you through getting to the settings to make the change there on the iPad. Another thing that's new with the new iPad app is that every time the student logs into TestNav, they will see a prompt that says Confirm App Self-Lock. So that prompt is going to display every time the student logs in. They just need to click or tap Yes, and it will allow them to log in, complete logging into TestNav. If they say no, it's just going to show an error message, take them back to the sign-in screen. They need to just put in their username and password again. This time choose Yes, and they will be able to log into TestNav. I see a question about the training. If this PowerPoint is going to be made available after the webinar is complete, yes. We will be posting a recording of the training as well as the PowerPoint, and those will be on the Alabama Avocet site under T for training, and they will be posted there. Should be by the end of the week. Okay, so now you've set up the iPad. Another thing kind of new this year, want to make sure you're aware of, this is specifically again for iPads. So Apple only allows that AAC mode, the single app kiosk mode, to run on a device for a certain amount of time after a student logs into that single app mode. So once they log into TestNav and it goes into single app mode, it will only allow that mode to run in the case of iOS 9.3.2 through 9.3.5, our supported versions, for a limit of 3 hours. So consecutive login time into that single subject of TestNav, they have a time limit of 3 hours. So most students aren't ever going to, run up to that 3-hour mode. Our tests are not designed to be anywhere close to a 3-hour testing. However, we know that we may have students who have extended times that they have as an accommodation. So you do want to make sure before you begin testing that you determine if you're going to have any students who may exceed that 3-hour limit for an individual subject test. If you know that you have some students that are going to exceed that time limit, just plan a break for them. An hour and a half, 2 hours into the test, plan a break for them, have them sign out, take their break, come back. The room supervisor will be able to resume them, and then they log back into the test. And then that way, that's kind of, when you log out of TestNav, that's ending the kiosk mode. They log back in and their 3 hours are started again. So that way they're not getting kicked out of the test. If you don't plan for that, the time limit expires and the student's exited. Obviously that's not ideal because the student is getting kicked out rather than a planned break that they knew was coming and they could plan for that. It's a little distracting to a student to get kicked out of the test. So they would get kicked out. The room supervisor would still need to resume the student in the portal so that the student could log back in. But on top of that, they also have to actually fully restart the iPad and the TestNav app before the student could log back in again. So just, like I said, take a look, see what your accommodations are. If students have extended time that might take them past 3 hours, just plan a break for them. And this applies only to the iPads, the iPad app. Okay, so system check, like we talked about earlier, system check is not designed for devices, and we said we'd talk about the app check for our apps. So this is built into the app, and it's there under the user drop-down menu. There is an app check option, and that's what's going to assess readiness, kind of similar to that verification step where I typed in username and password, and it took me into the full screen mode, and I got my congratulations message. The app check is essentially the same thing, and it's going to either show a success or failure message to let you know that the app check, either failed or was successful. So I'm going to go out to my desktop app because it's also here in our, it's an app, it's in our desktop app. I'm going to go to the user drop-down menu, and there's app check. Goes into that full screen mode. Behind the scenes, it's checking, making sure that I can successfully get in, and I get my green app check with successful message. If you got the error message, I come back out to my error codes here on the TestNav 8 support site. Under our troubleshooting, there's the app check error message. So I can come here, get a little bit more information to try to resolve that, and then rerun my app check and hopefully get it successful at that point. The next component we're going to talk about for TestNav 8 is a behind-the-scenes component. It's called the Early Warning System, or EWS. It is integrated functionality in TestNav. Again, it's running in the background as students are testing, and it's there to alert you to issues that could arise during the test administration. This could be something like an interruption in network connectivity, other applications attempting to take control of the desktop. So, we saw it went into full screen mode. If the student tried to go and access something, it would log them out. Another thing, though, you need to plan for is that pop-ups that are occurring in the background. You should never have any other applications running, but you could have like an update reminder or an email notification, anything like that that could pop up on the computer. You want to make sure that you're disabling that or rescheduling those updates for a time when students would not be testing, because anything that pops up on the computer, the early warning system sees that as something other than TestNav trying to, be accessed on the computer. At that point, it will kick the student out. So in the case of one of these events occurring, the early warning system will put up a pop-up screen on the student's computer, and it'll prompt them to alert their test proctor, is what it's called, but on the screen, but that is, of course, the room supervisor. Just have them raise their hands, let the room supervisor know that there was an error message, and then they can come over and look at that information. That's where they'll see that error code message. You can look at those TestNav error codes online. But definitely, with the early warning system, some of those notifications can involve the IT staff. Room supervisors need to be actively monitoring all of the students in the room. So, of course, they need to try to help that student get back on, but if it's an issue that really requires more assistance than they can provide, need to have a clear communication plan so that they know who to contact for their IT, and the IT staff can then come in and assist the room supervisors so that they can get the students testing again. The other thing that the early warning system does is it's actually maintaining the students' responses in what's called a saved response file, or SRF. So the EWS, it's writing continuously in the background. So as the students start to go log into TestNav and input their answer selections, the EWS, the early warning system, is taking that information and writing it to the saved response file in the background. If the students go back and change an answer, it's gathering that information and making sure that that is being saved there in that file. Some districts, might be concerned if a student might be overwriting each other's files. TestNav ensures this doesn't happen because it uses a unique file name for each student's test attempt. So it's a combination of the student's authorization ticket and the test session is used so that each SRF is uniquely identified. So as the students start to test, those responses are being saved. The SRF then has a response data threshold of about 2 to 3 questions. At that point, it's going to trigger TestNav. After those 2 to 3 questions, TestNav then says, okay, I need to send this response data over to the Pearson servers. It is going to start that upload at that point. So it's not, each individual response is not being uploaded immediately, but it's going to have that small batch of responses to upload. That upload process is continuous. So if for some reason it says, okay, I have my batch, I'm ready to upload it, it goes and tries to transmit it to the servers. If it fails, the student still just continues to test in the background, and TestNav says, okay, I just need to keep storing up a few more questions, and we'll try again later. So it'll have a batch of 2 to 3, then it'll go to 4 to 6. So it's just going to keep gathering that information until it can successfully hand it off. But all that time, the student can continue testing. It's not interrupting the student's test. Once that data upload is successful, we have a successful handshake. Our servers say, yep, I've got your information. At that point, TestNav, there locally, it deletes that SRF that it transmitted to our servers because it got a successful handshake. It says, okay, I can delete this. So we're only keeping that data on the student's computer for a short amount of time so that you don't have that secure information there. It is, of course, encrypted, but you don't want to have that on your local computers for very long. So once it submits it to us, it deletes it off of the local computer and starts a new empty SRF. Again, takes those 2 to 3 questions, transmits it, delete it, starts again. So it's a continuous process, and those SRFs are only there for a short amount of time. And again, it's TestNav always uses that unique login information to identify the SRF. So if a student has to log out and logs back in and is resumed, it does go find that same SRF, make sure that it's starting to save that information in that same location again. And since we only have one SRF at a time for that student, then there's only one SRF that can be used when the student resumes their test. Okay, so we've gone through now all of our proctor caching. We've gone through system check and TestNav. We have just a little bit left to kind of put it all together. Some last minute reminders and information. So don't forget, you need to set it up, configure your firewalls. If you have intrusion protection systems or IPS, or instruction detection systems, IDS, any content filters, proxy servers, basically anything on your network that could reroute, alter, or block our files. You want to configure it, whitelist those URLs and ports that we talked about earlier. And then also, like we talked about with TestNav, you want to make sure that you are disabling or suppressing or rescheduling any background applications or taskbar notifications. You, again, don't want those to pop up while a student is testing and kick them out of the test. So make sure you're accounting for updates or taskbar notifications that may occur, then either disable or reschedule them. Make sure you identify your proctor caching machine or machines. Remember, you can do this at the district or the school level, and you're going to put in those settings into the portal. So you're going to identify your proctor caching machine, install the software onto that machine or machines. Then you need to make sure you get that IP address information and go create your default settings in the portal so that you're actually creating the link. You don't want to just install proctor caching on the computer and forget that step of creating your proctor cache settings, because then TestNav does not see that there's a proctor caching machine. Those settings in the portal are what are linking your proctor caching machine together to your test sessions once students start to log in. Make sure you plan out your testing rooms. Think about, your devices and peripherals. Make sure you have enough of them for all of your students. This includes things like power strips, keyboards, mice, headphones. If you have students who are taking like an English text-to-speech audio computer-based test, make sure you have headphones for them. Make sure you've tested everything in advance, that they are working and operational so that students aren't there on the day of testing and have faulty peripherals. Set up all your mobile devices. You want to make sure that the TestNav app is installed on all of your computers. That's our recommendation. So get the TestNav app installed on them in advance. And if you are using, laptops, iPads, Chromebooks, we do recommend a plugged-in approach. So if possible, have them plugged in. You don't want them to run out of battery while a student is testing. But at the very least, you do want to make sure that they are fully charged. So again, that hopefully the student makes it through a test without having any power issues. We do support wireless testing. So you want to make sure if you're doing wireless testing that you have sufficient wireless access points and that you know your capacity. So there are some best practices that we have for wireless testing. You do want to make sure, again, like I said, have sufficient wireless access points and limit the number of computers per wireless access point for better performance. Computers that are located closer to the wireless access points perform better than those that are far away. And take into account things like obstructions. So you could have walls or equipment that's between the testing workstations and the wireless access points. Obstructions can disrupt the connection and negatively affect performance. And I always talk about, cinder block walls in schools. So many times you see those. And so just make sure that you're limiting those obstructions so that the students are able to access the wireless access point. And then we'd recommend having a scale-up process. Set up a small number of workstations first. Measure your performance, see if there are any kinks you need to work out on your wireless plan, and then set up a larger number of workstations from there. So don't go set up everything. Start small and build from there. Okay, so we have gotten through all of our information for today. So again, this training will be posted out on the Alabama AVSET site. I'll show you that real quick. I'm going to go to T and under training. So you can see that we have the infrastructure trial webinar that we had earlier and that recording and the PowerPoint. Our new testers, that recording is up already. And we'll get the PowerPoints for new testers and this one for returning testers up soon. And then this Tech Readiness webinar will be posted as well. So they're on the Alabama AVSET under T for training. Okay. Don't see any other questions coming in. So if you do have questions after today, you are always welcome to contact our customer support. They're available Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Central Time. Their number is 888-802-7502, and Alabama is option 2 on the phone tree. You're also able to email them at actaspire_implementation@actaspire.org. And we also have a survey if you'd like to take some time to submit feedback for this training. We always like to know what we did well or what we could have done better for next time. The survey link is www.surveymonkey.com/r/actaspire_fall2016. I am your trainer, so select Sarah Snuggs. And then under the name of the webinar, you can go ahead at the very bottom of the list, there's an other option, and just put in the Alabama Tech Readiness Training. I thank you very much for attending today, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.